Okay, so at 6:04 p.m. on August 20th, 2025, I can officially start the meeting for the Easton Master Plan Update Committee. Call to order. Um, do we need to do the remote meeting instructions?
Vote instructions and roll call attendance. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to read those? Remote meeting procedures?
Very quick gloss, I think, will be sufficient
Okay.
just to check the box.
Yep. So the remote meeting procedures. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting may be broadcast live and will be recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, do I need to read all this? That's what it is. Remember this part. To
We've
use Zoom.
summarized it before. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the key points are how people who might be in the audience participate.
Okay. So applicants will join the webinar as. Nope, that's not it. All right. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep the meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of the platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While the board members or commissioners and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted with no video feed from them during the public testimony portion of the meeting. Members of the public can be recognized by using the raise hand function found under participants from Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you're joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If an applicant wishes to display materials, please make the request of the chair and the email materials to the board staff for sharing on screen. When starting testimony, please state your name and address for the record. There is a markup function in Zoom which will allow you to call out specific areas of presentation materials. As in any public meeting, indecent behavior will not be tolerated, and anyone who abuses the use of meeting platform will be terminated from the meeting. Okay. Is that basically all? Board members are asked to announce themselves when making a motion in a second, so it will be clear to the audience and minute takers who made the motions. All votes will be made by roll call. When all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, the members will vote to adjourn the meeting, signaling the end of the meeting and the termination of the ECAT recording. All participants will be disconnected from the webinar at that time. Okay. That good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll do a roll call attendance. Dostumian present. Zeigman,
Here.
Babbitt,
Present.
Defensor,
Here.
Drown,
Present.
Durance,
Here.
and Percio.
Here.
Okay, we have quorum. So the first order of business tonight is to review and accept the July 29, 2025 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
Yep.
Yes.
Zigmund.
Any comments or make a motion to accept?
Yep. Zigmund, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Babbitt, second.
Okay. All in favor, Dostumian, yes. Zigmund,
Yes.
Babbitt,
Yes.
Defensor,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Durance,
Yes.
Percio.
Yes.
Great. Okay, next up is reviewing the master plan update final draft prior to releasing it for its 30-day comment period. And I can turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, are you going to share this, or do you want it to be shared, or?
Yes, I think I will share my screen and
Okay.
walk through. So I appreciate that. Thanks. It's good to see everybody. Um, so yeah, that's the goal is um, to get a sense from this committee if you feel like this draft, maybe with some minor tweaks and changes, is ready to be released for public review period. That's our goal tonight, is to kind of assess that with you all. Um, what we find sometimes is a good metric is really if you feel like there's anything are there any glaring issues or omissions, um, that you really want to see get put into the draft for public comment. Um, I just wanted to, before I start sharing my screen and get lost in that screen share, you know, we we're not tasked with doing a whole rewrite, so that's sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad because it's a little challenging because we want to put a lot of information in, but what we're really trying to do with you all and with the town is to try to find themes or trends or issues that have emerged since 2014 and kind of pull them to today and help the town kind of set up some goals and actions to try to accomplish certain things over the next 10 years. So it's tempting to want to put everything back in, but we did leave some stuff. We did leave some stuff, in the 2014 plan that is still relevant, and I think it's always a resource that the community can go back to. It's definitely a wealth of information, that 2014 plan. We're trying to highlight the things that have emerged since then, and then what we're doing is based on some of the community input and really looking at the plans and information and projects that have been looked at and accomplished since 2014, really identify where they have goals and actions that we can pull forward. The intent really is that each of those plans had some kind of community engagement. They were they were prepared for a purpose, and we really feel like kind of pulling them through here is one of the best ways to do this, on top of things that we've identified that were not done in 2014 or that have emerged since then. So that's just kind of an overarching thing. I can see, Stephanie, you want to chime in. So, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oops. I just want to interrupt for a moment because we've had someone else join, but they're only identified as iPhone. So I'm going to allow them to talk just so whoever they are can identify themselves, and I can promote them to a panelist if they're a member of the committee.
Yes, Stephanie, it's Chris Lopes.
Okay, perfect. Chris, I'll promote you
okay.
to a panelist.
Okay, I'm going to keep my camera up.
Sorry for that interruption.
That's okay. It's good checking. So, again, that was a preamble, just to make sure we're kind of starting at the same place. I am gonna walk through the report, but what I would hope, if it's okay with the committee, I would like to start with chapter 2, the trends and challenges, because we really haven't talked through that yet. I would like to try to get to the table, the matrix, the goals and actions, and then I'm assuming we'll have time. I can circle back to the existing conditions. We presented that back in May. The committee had some really good questions, and we did kind of update some of the data, but it hasn't changed substantially. And so is that okay with the committee? If I kind of start with chapter 2, just because we haven't really kind of discussed that, and it's a major component. So, okay, so I saw some nodding heads. Cool. I appreciate Wayne's help. I did send a first draft, and I had some easy misses on people's names and assignments from the committee, so we've corrected that in this version too. But otherwise, let's see, which screen am I sharing here? Sorry, I'm going to restart that screen share because Perfect. Okay. So table of contents, pretty straightforward. It is clickable, so when this goes out, people can click to areas that they're interested in. The acknowledgements page, the executive summary. What we find is best is to wait a little bit longer to produce this. We don't have a draft of it yet, and the committee hasn't seen a draft, so we hope that maybe we can talk about this briefly right now. But I think releasing it for draft review, we are kind of trying to meet some kind of time frame. So I think we would propose that we release it. We could add, text, some red text in here, say placeholder, language forthcoming. But typically, the executive summary is not substantive; it's more of a summary. And so that is something that, as soon as we get this out for draft review, I think we can come back to the committee and start working on a draft of the executive summary. It's just kind of bifurcated because of the way that we're stuck with some of the timelines. So I guess is that okay to ask a question of the committee to just make sure that that's generally acceptable as an approach? And we can
That's
tackle all
fine.
the questions at the end, but
Yeah, it's fine by me. We do it at our agency all the time, so
okay.
it's not
Fine by
unusual. I don't
me.
think.
Perfect. I think that's just helpful guidance for us. All right. And so if hopefully my screen shared all the way to chapter 2, so trends and challenges. What we're really identifying at the front here is that the 2014 plan had two overarching themes, and they were sustainability and communication and connectivity. So when you look at that plan, it's not the easiest place to find it, but those are the themes that were identified way back when. And we wanted to note that, and then we wanted to incorporate the opportunity for a reader to get access to the 2014 plan. So maybe these should be blue in this final version, but these are clickable links to the 3 volumes which constitute the 2014 plan, and we thought that was important, so that people who are curious and want much more detail can get there quickly and easily. And then really just a statement of purpose, which is really to update the master plan and assess sort of which goals have been accomplished since 2014 and identify new goals and actions that have emerged. And so that's our overarching kind of push here. And we did show the graphic early on, but looking at the really a tremendous amount of planning and activities that have happened. These are also going to be clickable links in the final version so that people can get to these documents once they see them. And we're really finding that this day and age, the shorter these master plans can be, the more likely it is that someone will actually thumb through the whole thing. So this was a really good way for us to condense a tremendous amount of information in kind of one area. And then it was sort of cherry picked a little bit, but on page 29 here, really looking at some of the major projects that help shape the town. And so I think there's some subjectivity here, and we can talk about moving these around or adding or subtracting to them as we go. But really kind of starting with the sewer district creation in 2010 and kind of going through, these are some significant highlights. And we're trying to say that these are major plans, and maybe there's a word we can add in here to say, some of the following major projects, just to kind of make sure that we don't get stuck on people really nitpicking, kind of that we didn't list all the projects here as well. But things like that. So as we go forward, if people want to interrupt me, I think that's a good way to do it. And then again, just trying to think if there's stuff that's just glaring issues or omissions that you really would like to see resolved before we release it. Stephanie, you look like you're going to say something. Do you want?
Yeah, I
Yep.
was going to say, so kind of maybe, well, I like the language that you have here, but maybe it could be that some of the critical infrastructure projects and plans that have been implemented since 2014 include,
Okay.
and it's not a complete laundry list.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
the other, and I'll ask Wayne to kind of weigh in on this. You have Easton Sewer District created. I wonder if it's Easton Sewer Districts defined. And Wayne gave that a thumbs up in case you didn't.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I would also suggest inserting, the age-friendly action plan? That was a very big planning
Yes.
initiative and
Yep.
really speaks to the aging population, and it was extremely well done, very well received.
Yep. So we can add that in there. It'll show up, on the page before in the graphic, but we can include that here.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's good.
then one other thing, and we could maybe talk about this a little bit more offline if people don't want to get down in the weeds, but you have the promoting a sustainable Easton begins, and we kind of hope that would be the case, but I'm not sure how that's going to continue. But I do think it was a really important activity and investment actually made by the town in evaluating the financial situation and how municipal finances work and educating people. So,
Yeah, and it could be that, it's actually what we were trying to say is that when the committee was formed. So
yeah,
that could be another just note that PACE was formed in
yeah.
terms of the committee, because that was a town, it was a town meeting action that formed the committee. So we wanted to highlight that. And I think, our goal would be, and sorry, I'm going to take one pause here. We wanted to get the draft out on Friday. We got it to you on Monday. So we realized we haven't given the committee a ton of time. I think the schedule was a few more days, for the committee to look at this and provide any other feedback, or if we're generally able to kind of tackle some of these notes tonight, if we're ready, we can talk about that at the end of the meeting. But yep. So I'm going to keep going, but I think chiming in will help me move, identify where the committee has some questions.
This is Sahara.
Yes.
Just under where it says Easton in 2025, and it has like some numbers. Would it be possible to either bullet point those instead of put numbers, just to signify that they're not in any order of importance? I don't. For me, that just seemed, I don't know if it makes a difference, but I think like for some people reading, they may think like numbers signify some sort of like order or placement of importance.
Yeah, I think I agree with that observation.
Yeah, and that's an easy fix. And I think we were just trying to capture the number of sort of topical areas so we went from that 2 in the first, we pulled through 2 themes, and then here we're looking at 9. But I think the bullets would be totally fine because we're not maintaining the numbering system throughout the rest of the report. So that's a good observation, easy fix.
Jeff, this is Joanne. Can I just make
Yes.
one other general observation related to language? This is kind of a tricky topic that everybody's coping with in different ways right now. A lot of the things that are going to be needing to be implemented in this plan are going to require funding. And some of the terminology that's being used in this plan may not be as neutral as perhaps it ought to be if some grants are pursued in the future. So I don't know if that's something that this committee wants to discuss, or if that's even, I'm just going to leave it there. But I just wanted to bring it up. I think it's a very important fundraising document for a community, and I just wanted to put that out there to make sure that everybody's okay with the language and understands that some terms are now being.
I would just ask what you mean by it's not neutral.
So there are grant programs that my agency has pursued where, because of the language that's been used, like climate, for example, instead of weather variability, there's been pushback on, I can't really explain it more than just to say that
is this in
words are
response to
important
the
these days.
the current political climate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think that the agencies that award these grants at the federal level especially are looking at things differently, and how things are written matters.
I think we definitely want to try to look at where some of that language can be identified and talk through it briefly tonight. The changing landscape, at the federal level is definitely going to be important. I think the difficult task, just as we go through this, is just trying to find, like, are you comfortable releasing it for draft public review, or do you want something changed before that happens? And so that's just when I'm listening to you, I'm just trying to I want to sift through the things that you guys are raising, and then try to figure out if it's important enough to do so that it's in that public draft review. But Joanne, as we go through, if you can help us identify any other areas when we're walking through, that would be helpful. I think climate is a good one. We are leaving a pretty big placeholder here tonight for the climate action plan to move forward a little bit further. So some of that stuff could, especially in that realm, could get vetted there. where those, that consultant team is an expert in climate resiliency efforts, and so they'll kind of give us some feedback as well, give the community feedback.
And Joanne, I understand your point and concern, and this will be reviewed by the planning board and as well as this and presented to the select board. So before trying to bend over backwards on that, maybe wait to see what kind of feedback we get from other people. At the same time, maybe thinking about that, I just have personal thoughts on it myself that probably aren't useful or helpful to share.
Yeah, same here.
Me too.
Yeah, so we have a lot to cover, and I think that's great. If you can flag, as we're walking through, I think you guys had said it last time, if there's something that from a local perspective you think will be, sensitive, we wanna think about that, and we will not necessarily have the best handle on that in every case. So, financial sustainability, despite what Stephanie was kind of saying, whether or not that PACE committee stays together or how that moves forward, we were really informed by it, and we think it's an emerging trend that is going to be with the town for quite some time. So we tried to just hit it quick with, in June that the residents rejected the proposed override, but the process leading up to it, the creation of the PACE committee, really we think is worth mentioning and spending a page to capture, really kind of talking about the community compact. So if you're not aware, the PACE committee, the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee all signed this compact on behalf of the community. And basically the bolded text and the bullets are pulled almost directly from that, because we see that that's been a commitment of the town. And Stephanie, might have we might need to work through this a little bit if things have changed, but it actually does a really great job of framing this whole discussion of the future financial stability of the town, and it breaks it down into the bolded categories. And most master plans don't cover financial elements very very much, but kind of starting with the land use and infrastructure is where we start to see this theme of a pretty consistent narrative moving through. So embracing pro-growth policies and practices to promote economic and housing development, and really looking at the way the regulatory boards work, assess and revise policies to maximize opportunities and economic growth while preserving Easton's character, and then prioritizing timely infrastructure investment, especially those seen as barriers such as sewer access. So those are, real overarching themes that we're carrying all the way through. I won't read all of these because hopefully you will have looked at it already or will look at it, but I feel pretty comfortable lodging this financial section here because, as Stephanie said, it was going to go to the select board, and that body has been pretty involved and sign the compact. Then the way the rest of the report is, the way we tried to set it up is we tried to set up trends and challenges. And Heather and I had a conversation about those terms, but we think that in almost all of these discussions there's a trend, and then there are these challenges, there's this give and take, and so we wanted to kind of keep this theme kind of consistent throughout. Some of the financial trends, the trends are a little easier to identify. They're generally a little bit more positive elements, but creative use of financial tools. So there's a couple examples. Really, the override and the compact approach really are marking a new era of fiscal policy. So it's going to be something that the town will be talking about for the next many years, and it's going to factor into a lot of decisions that are made with the master plan. Public engagement and budgeting, that seems pretty clear that this was a new thing, that maybe not new, this was a thing that people wanted to be engaging in. And then leveraging state and federal funding. So those are pretty common, good trends to have written here. And then the challenges is we did use the different number, but the deficit is a little bit larger than the override number, so we're including that here. And it signals a long-term strain that the town is going to have to grapple with. Limited growth and revenue streams, are the cause. So some of these are the causes of that's the potential causes of what are happening. And then sustaining services. That's one of the challenges, maintaining service levels while addressing the rising costs. And then the need for financial equity. So balancing affordability with service provision. And then we have a couple areas where we talk about the more vulnerable populations, so seniors, veterans. And then this is just a graphic and an image from one of the PACE outreach meetings. So as you see, if you haven't opened this already, but we're trying to keep it about 2 pages per topic area to kind of keep this kind of concise and moving forward. So housing sustainability, we're trying to acknowledge that the town has built a lot of housing. There has been a lot of housing built in the town, but the increased cost of living remains a critical concern. And so it's not a hidden factoid. It's embedded throughout the housing production plan as well. Acknowledging that there have been some steps taken, and then really looking at the housing production plan and kind of looking at how that provides the framework, emphasizing the need to provide affordable housing for the senior population and attract and retain young families, including developing smaller units for seniors and family homes, and then advocating for the variety of housing types. So those are like the overarching elements of the housing production plan that we want to highlight here. And then we are on the right hand side of the page, we're kind of trying to make the connection between the production plan and the community compact, kind of to just show that we're anchoring kind of these ideas. We're locating new residential, multifamily, and mixed-use development in near existing business centers, transportation hubs, and village districts. The variety of housing is maintained and expanded to exceed the 10% threshold. The new housing in Easton is strategically distributed in a manner that's harmonious. So something that kind of comes through new affordable housing construction and rehabilitation are encouraged through adaptive reuse of buildings and town-owned properties that incorporate sustainability standards. So we're starting to see that through the climate action plan too. And then more equitable community is promoted through housing options that provide for people of diverse socioeconomic, racial and ethnic backgrounds. I'm trying to be sensitive. I don't know that I want to read through everything, but I'm trying to capture kind of the way that we set this up. So kind of thumbing through the next page, the housing trends are identified. And we're mentioning kind of the utilization of town-owned land with the growing focus on adaptive reuse and strategic disposition of the surplus properties and other uses. So we're trying to, for housing and other uses. So we're trying to make sure that there's some flexibility written in here for what happens with the 3 properties that the town is, going through the process with. And then challenges, the high cost of housing, meeting the diverse housing need, and then kind of grappling with creating flexibility, but also maintaining the community character. Looking at affordability and development costs, and then community buy-in. So those are kind of challenges that the town will face as it looks to support more housing. Economic development sustainability. So really thinking about how new growth, can be directed through incentives and streamlined regulations and availability of infrastructure while maintaining the town's unique character. So that's kind of this theme that we're seeing support consensus for development, but it has to be done in the right areas in a certain way. We're trying to highlight here kind of some of the key plans. The regulatory permitting diagnostic, which is a process that's underway now, is really looking at ways to help development move through the process faster. And then the local rapid recovery plan, we really think that this is a pretty important document to highlight along with the Queesit commercial district strategy. So 2021 and 2018, there was a really strong emphasis on that area in the corridor and really focusing on it. And we are carrying through a lot of those goals and objectives because looks like there's still a fair amount of work that could be done to support that. Really trying to highlight the 5 Corners diff. It's a really good innovative approach that the town took in that area, and there are some actions that still could take place. So we're highlighting that. And Stephen, I see here, and I just want to get through this one last page, and then we can circle back. But the Easton Industrial Park. So the way that we went to the community meeting, and a lot of the findings that we were already seeing really supports a renewed look at the industrial park. But that 2014 study probably needs to be updated in certain ways, but it really does provide this backbone for really looking at that area again. And then kind of touching on the intermunicipal agreement, which is the potential future sewer connection that would serve the industrial park. So we're just highlighting that. So I'll pause for a minute. I saw Stephen's hand.
Yeah, I was just curious, did you come across uh, opposition or delays and the processing of new construction, new whatever that people came to Easton and wanted to do something? I'm just curious about that.
I'm sure Stephanie can speak to that, but I think in terms of that permitting diagnostic, you know, it's a lot of streamlining. There does seem to be some opportunity to clarify certain things. And Stephanie, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit more on any of the details.
I'm not sure I understood the question, Stephen. I'm sorry. I was commenting on my copy, and I think I may have missed the very first part of what you were saying.
I was just caught with Jeff's comment about the streamlining of new businesses coming to Easton to make their entrance to Easton much more easier and much more streamlined and much more quick.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that's reality or is that something that everybody wishes to have.
So I think, and I think you used the word opposition previously. So is part of your question also, are there people opposed to additional growth? The primary purpose of the permitting audit is to remove barriers. If you have, we have projects that are generally by right, or, you know, they need to go through the subdivision process or the site plan approval process, but it's generally uses that would be allowed and in areas that are desirable for growth, that the town's already identified for growth. And Jeff mentioned the Queeset Commercial District, where zoning was changed back in 2016 to try to promote more growth, and the town voted for that zoning with the interest of trying to bring more commercial in growth in that area. The same with the Furnace Village District. The idea is to make the permitting process less onerous when you have businesses or development that is desirable to the town, and remove some of the hurdles that elongate that permitting process and drag it out longer than it should be. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. That's helpful. And I flipped to the economic development challenges page on the upper right, where we just say the regulatory complexity. We're using the word perception, but the perception of difficult permitting process. And when we did our stakeholder interviews, you know, a lot of people said it was a perception issue, but as that diagnostic shows, there are things that could be potentially changed to streamline it. Clarity and understanding, you know, even I think there's a kind of a bigger idea of condensing some of the boards or changing some of the permitting requirements, but that's all future steps that the town would need to decide whether or not to pursue. But I think my point is that when we work with a lot of different communities and developers in particular, they always talk about anything that can be done to streamline the permitting process is beneficial, helpful, and it's like worth pursuing, even though it may not solve all the problems. You know, development projects are complex and they're going to take time and money, but if it can be streamlined, it's an approach that, you know, most communities want to have on the list to potentially chip off.
Right, and that audit it's been the draft has been circulated internally for feedback and comments on it, but when we say streamlining, we don't mean bypassing important regulatory structures. So you know, we're not talking about skirting wetlands protection or making sure that traffic's being addressed and parking is being accommodated and the safety of the community at large as a result of the development. We're just talking about removing unnecessary hurdles and bureaucracy in the process.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I appreciate that because I did go back. So in our quick summary of that, process, the project, in the middle there, this effort intends to improve how the town process permits issued for new development projects to make the process faster, clearer, and more supportive without sacrificing environmental protection. And I think it's intended to imply without sacrificing the town's control over projects, but just looking, there are some low hanging fruit kind of things that could potentially be worth pursuing without disrupting the protections that are in place. And that'll come up. That's important for people to understand. So I appreciate that. Going back to the trends under economic development. So this is where one of my tasks in this is whether or not we go into lengthy discussion about every topic. I tried to kind of make sure that all the topics that we've discussed collectively are somewhere in the master plan. Kind of to Joanne's point, if you're building a grant application in the future and you can point to some text within the master plan and then hopefully a goal and objective that ties it together, that's what most grant funding sources look for, is that it's in the master plan. But we are trying to keep it concise and emerging, so we didn't list everything. But here, the second bullet under trends is really where I really was trying to focus on the integration of arts and culture. So the Shoveltown Cultural District underscores the role, the role of creative industries, and we just wanted to make sure that we mention that it's not this huge theme of the master plan, but it is an important element for the town to have within the master plan somewhere. And so that was just an example, because there's a couple other ones where we at least wanted to have reference to the project or the initiative, even though we may not be taking a lot of time to narrate it out. But the first bullet, we are narrating out because it's a real big theme, but the encourage development and activity centers. So starting at the financial piece and running all the way through is really looking at the Queesit Commercial District, North Easton, Five Corners, and the Industrial Park are really central to the future strategy. There's a lot of untapped potential in those areas, and there's some level of consensus on moving forward with making sure it's as supportive as possible in those areas. Kind of moving to the challenges, really looking at how infrastructure is really dependent on a lot of things, and it's really linked to upgrades, particularly sewer and transportation. So we just wanted to highlight that that's something that we see as a challenge, and we see luckily that the town has some opportunity to move forward, especially with sewer and some transportation related projects. There is a limited commercial base. There's just a limited amount of land, and we cover that in the existing conditions. And then the regulatory complexity, balancing growth and preservation. Maybe this is where Joanne, maybe there's some language in here, I'm not sure, but climate sustainability, really, we're trying to position this during 2024, 2025. That's our current understanding of when the climate action plan should be completed. And we can talk about that if it's going to push into 2026. But the climate action plan is poised to be created. It talks about the creation of the committee, and then really thinking about these high impact strategies. This was from the first set of information that we had from that group, but looking at the groups of energy and buildings, transportation, land use, natural resources, and resilient, healthy communities and waste. Those are kind of the overarching topical areas from that plan. We touch on the hazard mitigation plan and also the community choice energy aggregation effort. And then we get to these trends. So really continuing to kind of institutionalize this discussion within the town, starting with the MVP workshop, the hazard mitigation plan, and the climate action plan, talking about water resource protection, and then open space and natural preservation. There's three key plans here that we call out. So Tufts Farm, the Depot Street parcel, and the open space plan in general. And then kind of thinking through some of the efforts that overlap transportation and climate is really just looking at public transportation where it's feasible, and then complete streets to encourage walking and biking. So some of the challenges are climate induced infrastructure stress. So thinking about the way that storms are happening, the growing threats, and then funding and implementation gaps. So we're acknowledging here that many plans identify strategies, but funding and executing them remains a challenge. Some stakeholder coordination comments, and then equity and environmental access. So ensuring that climate planning and green space development are inclusive and accessible for all residents is sort of an ongoing concern, and really should be incorporated as much as possible. So with those were the items that revolved around sustainability, kind of like making sure that Easton has these viable options moving forward in a sustainable fashion. It's not necessarily the word sustainable, but it's just kind of making it kind of work within those groups. And then we shift to kind of cover the other important elements, and it's not quite the sustainability theme, but it's just these are the items that we pulled through from the 2014 plan and the community engagement. So transportation and connectivity. We are spending a little bit of time to talk about the transit feasibility study. It really is a good comprehensive review. It really identifies here that expanding rideshare and looking and working to leverage the Brockton area transit wherever possible, and then promoting existing town transit options. We're not talking about bus service just because it's really not going to be viable, but these other options are important. And then we did want to touch on the completion of the Depot Street Corridor project, and then we highlight other important future transportation projects. So we got these through some of the stakeholder conversations with the DPW, but Elm Street and Washington Street intersection. So it may be starting, but I couldn't tell. I couldn't get enough information, but it seems like it's positioned to start this year. And then Foundry Street was one of these future projects that is early in the Mass DOT tip process, that the DPW director, for example, wanted to make sure is getting carried forward, because there's going to be kind of significant discussions in town investment in the Foundry Street project. And then Washington Street, I think it's a little less developed, but it is a future Mass DOT tip project that we all see, I think, the value of pedestrian safety improvements on that corridor. So Stephanie, I think you had a
just one comment. Since you started this, the Elm Street and Washington Street intersection improvement project is actually underway.
Okay.
Expected to be completed in 2 years. So
okay,
I suggest just making an update to that.
I will do that. That's a great one. Like, that's the kind of thing I definitely want to be able to update that for the draft release.
And I think it's a good message to send along, that these projects that the town works on for so long and have appeared in past reports actually do come to fruition eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're mentioning safe routes to schools. In the community meeting in particular, we heard a lot from residents about the hope and desire to make sure sidewalks and access to the schools are improved. And it really is that the town really needs some representation at the school department level. So that's in there. And then kind of to Wayne's earliest point about the age-friendly action plan, we kind of put a heading under public health. We want to at least capture some of the elements here about kind of working in the age-friendly action plan and strategies to make Easton more age-friendly. The plan is pretty well structured to kind of fit and kind of pull through into this plan. So it has topics related to housing, transportation, and communication and information. So we're kind of just highlighting those. And then this last paragraph, so it starts on the lower left and goes up, really just kind of talking from this committee's discussions, identifying the importance of supporting the town's efforts to consider the aging population, as well as continuing to focus on and expand a range of services for all residents, including social and mental health services. So it's not this huge discussion piece, but it is here because we wanted to try to find the place to identify that that was important to this committee, and it's important to the town in general, but this is where we found the place to put it initially. And then talking about municipal buildings is how we're kind of referencing the surplus property project. Um, and we have some comments in there. And then the open space plan is really kind of where we end off this trends and challenges area, kind of describing the OSRP here. And actually, we stopped the trends and challenges format. So here we're kind of just highlighting the goals from that plan, which makes sense because the open space plan is a pretty robust document that has its own path forward in a lot of ways. So I feel like that was a lot of talking. I don't know if I should just keep going or if I should pause for a moment. I'm going to keep going. So the action plan, it's pretty long, but it actually was way longer. What we did in preparing this is we pulled all the goals and objectives, and we had some help from Stephanie and Wayne early on. We pulled all the goals and objectives from the 2014 plan into a new spreadsheet, and then we pulled in all the goals and objectives from all the plans that we just discussed, and it became a long, it was like a 50-page spreadsheet of all these different goals and objectives. And our task was really to try our best to cull through that and to make this action plan more streamlined, a little more condensed, and more realistic in terms of the types of goals that the town would look to be pursuing in the next 10 years. This language I was trying to convey, especially the second paragraph, that the goals and actions in this action plan are not intended to be exclusive or limited. So we want to be mindful of changes at the federal level or changes in Easton that could be happening. If there's a new action or a way that the town finds some goal can be accomplished, then we want that flexibility. We don't want to be anchored into someone saying that this action is the only way, because as we move forward in time, there are going to be other actions that might serve the same purpose. So we're trying to kind of get at that kind of caveat here that there are multiple ways to accomplish a certain goal, but we have a task, which is to produce an action plan. For the time being, the way this is structured is it follows the same order that the topics were discussed in the trends and challenges. So we're not trying to portray importance here, but we're just trying to maintain that same pattern. And it actually leads me to a big question that we can kind of think about over the next couple of minutes as I go through this. In certain cases, we're referencing the source on the right-hand side, and where there's a source and the plan has identified either funding partners or time frame, we've pulled those in. But as you'll quickly see, there's quite a few of these that do not have time frame established, and that was something that I think we wanted to get a little input on from the committee. How we want to handle that moving forward over the next couple months is, does the committee want BSC group to put together potential timeframes and the committee review them, or like Stephanie or Wayne or someone else kind of get in there and suggest timeframes? But that is a question that we have about the matrix here. So color coded, we tried to put the goals in this reddish color to kind of pull people to see the goal, and then the actions are underneath each one. I'm going to skim through the financial ones because it is really duplicative of that kind of initial page that we talked about, but it does pull through from the PACE compact, which we find to be a valuable resource. Housing, you can see the source on the right. We're really relying on the housing production plan for these goals. And as we went through all the other plans in the 2014 plan, we tried to assess whether goal number 1, captures other goals. And so if it did, we eliminated them, and we're just kind of showing this one goal here which was repeated a lot in the 2014 plan, but really locate new residential multifamily mixed use development in and near existing activity centers, transportation hubs, and village districts. So that's kind of that theme, and we see that as a great goal to have. And then there's the action plans underneath it.
Sorry, Jeff, can I just
Yes.
interrupt Stephanie? I think Stephen is stuck in the attendees again. He had his hand up earlier, I think, and then it dropped off. And you're muted, Stephanie.
Thank you for picking up on that, and I will re-promote him.
And then just because I don't know if it's the best use of time to read every single one, and I can, but I don't know if it is. But under housing, we have goal 1, action 2. This is how we tried to handle all the information was, we took a little bit of language from the housing production plan and then updated it with implement the recommendations of the surplus study as it may relate to housing. So there's no perfect way to do this without creating another very long, extensive spreadsheet, which we're trying to avoid to kind of help the town find their way more concisely to the key actions. I should stop for Stephen. His hand up is, I don't know if that's from before.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had a little technical issue. But my question was on goal 3, action 1 on page 42. Does it seem that the question or comments are complete? There's a missing blah, 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 blah.
Yes, there is. Yes, that's a good catch. Thank you. I didn't catch that. So I can look at that and figure out how to finish that statement.
And Jeff, if I may, I just have one suggestion, and this doesn't necessarily have to be before public comment. It can happen during. But do you think we can have a column for the lead and then a separate column for like supporting partners? I think it's important that there's like one department or one committee that is identified and held accountable for each action, and then they work with people in a supporting column. Otherwise, if there's 3 or 4 bodies listed in one as responsible parties, it could potentially get lost.
Or bold the lead one or something like that.
That's a good idea too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea, Wayne. And maybe bold it and have them listed first in the list.
And then just in terms of identifying the timeline and funding sources, what we've done on some of our plans is whoever the lead is, we ask those people to tell us what they think the time frame and a funding source could potentially be. So that way you're engaging the people responsible for that action in the process of thinking about it too.
Yeah, I think that's great. We can do the responsible parties and we can split that. And then I think you said that maybe it is something that we, generally maybe with tweaks, we move forward with releasing this draft and then we go through that exercise.
Yeah, I don't think it's important for the, I don't think it needs to hold up the public stuff.
Okay, that's good. And then, because I think it is probably a discussion that should happen at this committee initially. The only concern I have with going back to the responsible parties to establish timeline is if we have enough time left in our project to do that appropriately, because I know there's so many responsible parties that will get weaved in here, so I just don't know about the practical nature of that given where we are in our process. But I would welcome feedback as to any other options for that too. Not sure. I would like to think about that, and maybe we could have some options explored. I don't know. I think it's actually a really great strategy that we want to think about in the future for other projects, but I don't know if we can. Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just thinking and Wayne, you and I can talk later. Is that something that we could do? It's kind of a postscript.
Yep, I think that's one option.
He will not be me, so that's
right. the one other option I had thought after Joanne said that was, you know, as if we're successful in releasing this Friday or Monday or next week sometime, maybe there's an email that goes out to town staff, um, with an emphasis on opening the document and looking at potentially the time frame a little bit and see if we can get any input from people during that initial review period.
Well, how about this? It gets published, and the real first big action is that's the kind of, again, it's a postscript to the process to add that level of detail to the action plan.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple options. I think it's a great, you know, we didn't know how to handle it, and we pulled through where they existed. We pulled them through, but you know, I was a little hesitant to just do it because I think it really connotates some level of prioritization, and unless, which we don't want to do, we all put it on short term, like immediate, like, because not every action can hit that category. Okay, so we'll put a pin in that for now. I think if the group's comfortable with releasing the draft, because that's like our overarching goal, we will have to come up with a way, whether it's with BSC or postscript, to kind of work on some of that detail moving forward. I wanted to walk through the economic development section, mainly because there is a lot of focus here on the Queesit commercial district. It is the area that has the most planning associated with it. So what we did with goal 1, it's very similar to the housing goal, but this is support new growth within and enhance existing activity centers. So we broadened the goal to include all of the key activity centers. So the Queesit Commercial District, North Easton, Five Corners, and the Industrial Park. I mean, there are others, but those are the main ones that we're repeatedly seeing. And some of the actions could apply in any of those, and a couple of them are specific to Queesit or the Industrial Park. So I just wanted to kind of identify that, because we were going back and forth whether to create a specific goal just for the Queesit Commercial District, but we decided to broaden it because, for example, Action 1, upgrading intersections and enhance pedestrian access and safety, could be applied in any of those areas, and it really should be as part of any kind of future visioning projects. So we're looking at those areas, but Action 2 is really, there's been this strong emphasis to connect, you know, the Washington Street area and certain elements to surrounding open spaces, and so we kind of flip-flop around in here, and I just wanted to highlight that because we grappled with it for a little while to figure out what was the best way to handle this, and that's how we landed, at least for now. Yes, go ahead.
Just looking at this one in particularly, but as I was just scrolling through some of the others, I think we ought to list these, kind of going back to Sahara's comment about the kind of the elements you had listed and numbered in the beginning, and we don't want those because they're not in priority order. But here in the action items, I feel like they should be in priority order and reasonably able to be accomplished order. So for example, you talk upgrading the intersections, extending public sewer within the district. These are things we've heard. The planning board just met with some of the property owners in the Queesit Commercial District, and that was one of the comments we heard from them. And that's something that is doable. It would take a lot of work, and there's going to be some expense to it. But I look at, and this may sound funny, but like implementing a signage improvement program for private businesses, generally that is, I think when I see that, I think of like facade improvement programs where there's some kind of funding. I know Brockton had a facade improvement program, but they used their CDGB money to do that. And we don't have that kind of funding source, but if a funding source came up, that might happen. But I would move that further down. also organizing and build capacity of the business community. That really is going to be dependent on involvement from the business community itself. So I think some of these, I'm not saying they're not admirable and desirable goals, but I think some of them we have more control over in our current structure and staffing levels.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them should be more in the future.
Yeah, so I think it's great, Stephanie. I think we would like to figure out the way to do that with you. What do you think? I apologize because I'm coming to you all with more questions. Given where everything is at with your, you know, pending retirement, do you think there's an opportunity for you and Wayne to quickly go through and I mean, and I am trying to say, like, in the next few days to make the suggested change in priorities and we release the draft that way? Or do you think that we release the draft and have that as an action item of some sort for the community?
I think we release it and have it as an action item.
Okay.
There are things I have to get done within the next few days. And just kind of on an aside, I am going to be on contract kind of in an advisory position for at least a month, for a month. And perhaps this is something that we can work on.
Okay. Yeah, and I apologize. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to make sure we have a clear path forward. I think while we're here on this discussion, I think you know, our project scope is narrowing down to the end.
Yep.
So what I would maybe suggest is and one idea, it's just an idea, I'm not necessarily suggesting it, is for the committees, maybe the next meeting, for it to be a working type meeting where you guys talk through what you know and don't know about this matrix and ways to shift it around while it's in the public draft review period. And I think BSC probably would not attend that meeting, but just let the committee kind of work through that. And if we can get your input on where to reposition things, we can grab that information and we can then kind of come up with that second draft. As we come out of the public review period, we'll have, you know, we'll be going through it one more time to make changes and tweaks, and we could incorporate the committee's input with that. I just don't know that we have enough bandwidth left in our project to be present and help with that, but I think if that maybe is something that the committee could work on within the next month. And that's just one idea. That was one idea. That's a way to tackle that. Possibly.
Yeah, Wayne, you and I can talk tomorrow and talk with Joanne and Nikki.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
Can I just interrupt for 1 sec? I think Stephen Drown is in the attendees panel.
Again?
He said he was having technical difficulties.
Yeah, he's back in there now.
Thank you.
No, sorry, he's like popping on and off, so I'm not sure what's going on.
And then one more big question that I have is, and we kind of go to the climate section. So there are a couple different ways we're getting to climate information. One really is the hazard mitigation plan. Sort of a current valid document that the town has, and so we've pulled through those elements here. Pretty straightforward. Really don't think there's a lot of controversial type things here, but on page 49 that I have on the screen, we have a placeholder for the goals for the climate action plan. I think that I'm optimistic based on what I've gotten from Wayne and Stephanie that project should potentially get far enough that after this draft public review period, we could take the draft goals and actions from that plan and put them in here, which I think would be the best case scenario. And again, to kind of, not to be repetitive, but to think like someone who comes to the master plan for information, you know, it's the best situation where they can see the climate action goals and objectives here too. Another internal discussion that we had was we could, with a lot of these plans, we could just say implement the hazard mitigation plan and just be done. Or we could say implement the climate action plan, but it doesn't really give a resident enough information to kind of come to the master plan to kind of get clarity on what the town's overarching goals are. So that's why we kind of ended up kind of pulling these through and having them exist here. So there's a placeholder for now. And so that's my kind of like final question is, I think Wayne gave me some information. Do we think that within the next month the climate action plan might have been able to meet publicly and kind of discuss those draft goals?
Oh, I think so.
Okay. Because I think that's something that at the end of the day, when we come back after the public comment period, that we can talk to the committee briefly, or the committee can be shown those, and then we incorporate them here. Because I think it's going to be really important for the future work of the town. So I think with that, I'm not going to keep reading the goals and objectives. We cap off. We started this list of abbreviations. It was sort of an add-on at the end. We can keep building on this. In some cases, we've added kind of a second column for funding sources as well. But I did think this started to be important as we really try to shrink the matrix so that it's digestible. We put this together, and that could be a work in progress. And then the group has seen our community engagement summary, and so we just have the last couple pages to kind of capture the essence of the community engagement that has been part of this. And this is kind of customarily where we put kind of that to cap it off. So I think with that, I did say we would go through the existing conditions, but I know we're over an hour now, so I just want to make sure that the committee wants to hear about the existing conditions updates.
I just wanted to make one more suggestion.
Yes.
I think, if possible, I think it would be helpful to add one page at the end for implementation, just to let people know, like, what happens with this now. So, is there going to be annual progress reporting to the select board, who generally oversees the plan? Just something to kind of let people know what happens now with this thing.
Very good. And do you think that there is clarity as to what the committee wants to see there, or would it be a placeholder? Maybe that's something that we could put with the committee. The committee is going to have a little bit of work to help cap this off. So the executive summary would be something that we can draft and have the committee look at. Maybe the implementation page could be something that we draft and provide to the committee, or we could put in some really general text that we would, we'd be comfortable with kind of putting in any plan. Joanne, I don't know if you have any suggestions as to whether we put that in for the draft version.
I don't have a preference either way. I think I'd defer to Stephanie and Wayne as well as to what that should say, because I think they know how the internal workings kind of work.
I think if we're going to have it, we should have it before we release it. So that at least we know it's a thing that will exist. And we could signal that, this will be updated and refined or something like that. So
okay,
the most general, that you think would be appropriate, and then we can refine that.
I'm wondering, and it's just kind of popping into my head because as I'm thinking about this and thinking about Wayne, might that be something that you, Joanne, Nikki, and well, possibly me, could talk about? What should that look like? What should the I can think of some very general language that would be helpful. I mean, the plan should be used by different boards and committees and agencies within the town when they're making decisions and policy decisions, where money's going to be invested, what type of changes and policies need to occur. I think that would be helpful language, Joanne, but I think you may also be thinking, is there going to be maybe a regular committee meeting that gets together and reviews the plan and the progress that's being made and make some recommendations back to, say, the planning board and the select board? So
yeah, and I think for the public draft review, I think based on kind of this public meeting, this public discussion, kind of the way that Stephanie just positioned it, I think at a minimum we could put that general language in there and have it go out for draft, and then maybe refine that other element, because it seems like a little bit more of a policy decision as to whether the town commits these future resources to annually do something or not. But I think that general statement, Stephanie, about being used by different boards and committees, especially when there's financial decisions being made by the town, it's a resource for them and for residents. That kind of general language is, we could work together quickly on that and have something in there.
And even more.
And I see.
Sorry, I was gonna say even more on a general level to say or distinguish that the rather than this document be policy, it's a policy recommendation and guidance.
Tool.
Yes, a tool.
And just so, and then I see that Stephen has his hand raised, but probably should have announced to people at the beginning of the meeting that the town has made an offer and hired, and a new planning director will be starting on September 2nd. And so now I'm thinking, and one of the things we're planning on is for the new director and I to meet with the various boards, board chairs, to kind of talk about projects and things. So this would be a good one, Nikki and Joanne, a good topic for that meeting with, and the fellow is Ken Kirkland. He'll be starting on the 2nd.
I did have a question, but first off, I want to thank you, Stephanie, for all you've done for our committee and for the town as well. And I wish you the best going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I did have my hand raised just for some very small housekeeping issues, and that was on Chapter 1, Existing Conditions, page 13. I just found it kind of strange that was mentioned in paragraph 2 that Roach Brothers has 250 to 500 people employed. My only point is that Roach Brothers, from my opinion, is the smallest of the three supermarkets in Easton. And then on that same page, it makes mention in paragraph 3 that Bamsey has 1,000 to 499 people employed, and I'm not sure if that's just in Easton or if it's really mentioning for the total employment for the company. And then lastly, again, housekeeping, on page 20, Chapter 1, Existing Conditions, on paragraph 2, where it makes reference to formerly operating farms. It's not Culver Valley, it's Clover. Just move the L over and be all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Those are great. And I see Tana has her hand up too.
Yeah, I noticed a typo in table 1-1. I'm not sure what page that's on.
Table page 6.
Yeah. So where it says change from 2010 to 2023, that should be 1990 to 2023. Because I did the math.
Yes.
For the
Yeah.
percentage.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, we retooled. I am never been a self-proclaimed data expert. Oxa, who I think some of you met. She was at the community meeting. She is our data and graphics person, and so she went through um, all of the previous comments from the last meeting. Our suggestion, Heather and I, were that she listened. She listened to the meeting where Heather presented this first draft of the existing conditions, um, and there were a couple changes that um, you all had come up with questions and a couple changes. So let me see if I can quickly kind of summarize a couple of them. One was on page 12 here, this inflow outflow jobs count. So there was a question about it, I think, during the meeting, and there was a setting in our data collection that was turned off. So it only included private jobs, I think was the summary, and now this is all jobs. And so it really does help show that this paragraph on the left here, just to kind of summarize kind of where the workforce is coming and going from in Easton, and about 1,364 residents live and work in Easton. I mean, these are all general numbers that um, there are a lot of different ways to approach the data calculation, but this is where we we typically go with our general data collection. So we updated that to be just a little bit clearer. And then I think there were some questions about ways to get more detailed information on businesses that opened or closed. And we do have this other tool called Business Analyst where we can usually drill down, but it really doesn't have that much historical data to go back to and compare to. So we couldn't really capture that. I think that was a question that Stephanie had, and we did try. Um, there was also um, some information about folks who work from home. So the note was that was added, and the number of Easton residents that worked from home went up significantly in 2021, and we call that because of the pandemic. Um, so that got included, and then the last thing that I wanted to mention was sorry, I forgot where it was. It's table. Oh, there was a table in here, table 8, which caused a lot of confusion in our first round, which we removed and replaced. So I'm really sorry that I'm not as prepared as I wanted to be in this section. We had talked about the amount of vacant land. Let's see if I can find it. So this one was land uses. It should be this next page. Here it is. Sorry about that. So table 1-10 is really where we ended up kind of using this information to show what's vacant and developable. Instead of talking about all the vacant and tax exempt parcels, we were finding that it was too difficult to parse through that. But so this is what we ended up with, and it corresponds to the map, which shows generally where these areas are. And the reason why I wanted to belabor this for a moment was that I just wanted to make sure that as we all move forward and start to release this plan, there's a next level of detail that some communities can do with this data. It's called a build out analysis. And we didn't have that baked into our project. So we have this kind of preliminary look at, areas under each category that are developable and vacant, just to give the town the sense that there actually is not a lot of developable land left. And that's really kind of the takeaway here. I think the map, this corresponding map, really shows some of the developable and potentially developable lands. And it takes a while. There's a lot of data embedded in this map, but where you look at the red, for example, and the purple, it's just a good way to look at it is showing developable commercial and industrial land. And just by contrast, just to show that there are not a significant number of parcels that are, left. And that corresponds to the, sorry, I'm really getting bad with my screen share here. On this chart. So under the commercial zone, so I'm on the right-hand side, the developable land, really kind of roughly speaking, there's 86 acres left of vacant land that's zoned commercial. And then if you look at the industrial zone, so that's land that's zoned industrial, really just showing that, there's 23 acres left that are kind of clearly developable, and then this potentially developable means that there's much more analysis that would need to be done to kind of drill down and determine if there are wetlands and restrictions and constraints. But in lieu of a full build out analysis, this development constraints area is where we ended up kind of putting some of the detail rather than discussing the vacant lands, because I think we were getting confused with what's tax exempt, and what's vacant and developable. So we did try to take a sweep back through this existing conditions data to make it a little clearer for people. Great. So I think that's all I really have, unless there's questions or other things that we should cover. I have a list of some small items that we would update to kind of create a draft that would be suitable for releasing to the public. And then kind of Stephanie and Wayne, we can produce a flyer or sort of a graphic of some sort to help publicize, this draft is available, if you find that would be helpful. And then just thinking about making sure there's that pulse of media awareness that the plan is available and posting it on the website. So we can come up with a little short list of things, and both Stephanie and Wayne have been great about already doing that. But I think that's kind of the next step, is if we really want to kind of create that information for people to see this plan. Oh, you were muted, Stephanie. It looked like you were saying something.
I think so. I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
a graphic for us to put on the web page to
Right.
put out in
Town
social
crier,
yeah.
the Facebook page.
Great. And then, is it reasonable to think if BSC group can get sort of an updated document and a flyer graphic of some sort by Monday? We're pretty well on target. Do you think it's feasible to aim for someday early next week to release it? And then we would want to calculate the 30 days after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the reason for me to ask that is because then I saw on the agenda there was a question about the potential next meeting of this committee. And I don't know how to handle that with the group, if we want to talk about that.
So one of the things you suggested was in not necessarily that BSC needed to be there, but I thought this made good sense. And again, Nikki and Joanne, this could be something we talk about with Ken when we do our chair meeting, but is using the next meeting of the committee to go over the goals and do the prioritizing and the timeframes and kind of the lead analysis. Have I heard that correctly? If I got that right? Joanne, I'm waiting for a nod from you because you were the one that
sounds good to me.
So brought it up. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And in thinking about it, that's exactly what we did with the original master plan. We actually had subcommittees, and the subcommittees met and went through that level of detail with the action plan. So I think we can do it with this group. And I think it would be helpful to the new director as well. It would be a good introduction for them. And
So
I know
would
just can't wait.
sorry, would we be looking at the September 24th or October 8th date for that? Or would we be looking at a new date before that?
I think that depends on people's schedules.
Yeah, I'm looking at the timeline with the sort of what we're doing when from the minutes. I just pulled that up. And we've got this meeting. We're releasing the draft August 22nd, but it'll probably be more like next Monday. Then there's the planning board meeting on the 25th. They're going to receive it. There's a planning board presentation on September 15th.
Type 2 diabetes. Once weekly Manjaro could help.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Unknown.
My phone just started talking. I don't know what, I don't even know what it was.
I thought that was Joe from ECAT.
I don't know, some
That's
kind of
great.
pop-up just came on my phone.
It
Sorry.
sounded like Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm like, great, field trip. All right, so there's going to be a planning board presentation on September 15. The public comment period closes. We've got the September 22nd, but it'll be a few days after that. Then right now we have placeholders for September 24th or October 8th for the committee to review the draft plan public comments. So it's scheduled to be a committee meeting, and I don't know if BSC was planning to be at that one. And then we've got a final draft submission that has to go to the select board by October 14 in order for us to present it to them on October 20. So will we have one more master plan update committee meeting with BSC group, or is this our last one? Like,
I think we're good for one more. I just didn't know, without consulting with Heather, I didn't know if we could do all of that. So I didn't know if we would need to attend the planning board meeting. And we can talk offline if that's easier, but I do think maybe having the committee meet on September 24th to go through the action plan, that would, and then there should be some public comments available. And then I think that would allow us to receive the public comments and start looking at them as well and start working on the draft. I think we would commit, maybe the committee, it might be a lot if the committee is available to meet both of those days, the September 24th and October 8th, because October 8th might be an important meeting for us to come back and present everything that has been updated and kind of get to that final version, and prep for that October 14th date, which is I think that's one of our key targets right now, is to make sure that we have a final version that everyone's comfortable enough moving to the select board.
Stephanie and Wayne, what if you both, with the new director, have a go at filling out the table with leads and we talk about it on the 24th? That way, instead of starting from scratch with some of them, you guys might give us an indication and then we can just kind of feed in on what we think. Because it sounds like a lot to do both that as well as discuss public comments. Depends on how many of those there'll be.
Wayne, we could do that. That could.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wayne, you faded out. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So we're talking about how we update the goals and actions table, Joanne, and then have that for discussion with the group without BSC on September 24th. And then with BSC, if people can do it on October 8th. So we'd have those two meetings. Is that something people feel that they have the capacity to do, this group?
Hannah has a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And I think the only caveat,
Yeah, I think Michelle did too.
I think holding both dates might be important, but I do think with that kind of revised idea of having that staff review kind of go through and move the goals and actions around and set time frame maybe and leads. If that can be a work in progress, and then that and the public comments are coming on and discussed on 9/24, I think BSC would want to attend that meeting to help kind of work through that. We would have all the information we need to then leave and produce that final draft. And maybe the 10/8 meeting is not necessary. It's a little ambitious, but I think we feel pretty good about it. I think we will get some public comments. The question is always whether there's something truly substantive that we missed and we really need to just totally revamp on, or if it's tweaking and fine tuning and incorporating a couple other things or ideas. I think I know that I could commit to attending 9/24 if that pre-work on the goals and objectives is done, and then we have the public comments to review. I think that would be a great meeting for us to be at.
Yeah, Wayne, that could be something we talk about with Ken on the 2nd and just schedule a date that I come in.
Oh, cool.
Or do a Zoom or whatever. Yeah, I think that's doable. I think that's under the contract.
We can offer you virtual brownies or something. Okay, so we're not going to be meeting not going to be meeting October 8th. We will be meeting September 24. We will have updated the goals and actions matrix on our end for discussion. We'll also be addressing any public comments we will have received in the meantime. And all of this will be to get the plan into a condition that you can essentially finalize it so we can get it to the select board ahead of their October 14 submission date for their October.
Yeah, I think that it sounds like a good approach. It's fairly similar to where we were at, but I think with a little fine tuning.
Okay.
Great. I would just make the one other offer is that, maybe through Stephanie, if there are other comments that the committee members have on the draft, especially in the next couple days, if you're able to get those to Stephanie, I think that will be helpful. I know we went through a lot and we kind of skimmed over the existing conditions, but if you find typos or have other questions or something, I think Stephanie, is that appropriate to kind of still get them to you?
Yeah, Wayne and I will work on
Okay.
that. If you can do that, I actually started marking up my copy and I saved it, Wayne, in the folder so we can take anyone else's comments and corrections and add them to that one document.
Sure. And I know it's not a lot of time, but I was thinking by like Friday, if people had any additional comments, it's not that this is the last opportunity, but it's just really kind of getting it cleaned up enough to kind of get it out for that draft review. So there is more time to continue to look at it, but if those comments could get to Stephanie by Friday, Stephanie and Wayne by Friday before they leave the half day on noon. Is it noon on Friday? I'm learning.
Effectively, yeah, 12:30. Yeah.
Because I think then if we got that from you all on Friday afternoon, we can kind of work on it and I think my understanding right now is we should be able to make all these edits by Monday and have that kind of cleaned up draft and ready to go. It doesn't seem like we're talking about anything truly significant at this point, so that's good.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
This is Sahara. I have a question. Would it be possible to get a copy of this in like Word format? Just so if we have to make comments or something, it's easier to do that.
We've tried it. We can try it again. It's just a really large document. The file size is so cumbersome in Word for whatever reason.
Okay.
The Sahara, can you? I'm going to offer a couple. I don't know what your availability is during the day. I don't know if you have the ability to print it and then mark it up and either scan it and send it back if that's easier, or if you don't have the capability to print it, we could print it here if you could get to the town offices for the copy.
Okay. All right.
Or I could drop it off. I'm going to be out and about tomorrow.
I think there's one other option, which is it's just I don't exactly I don't exactly know how it works. We are like through BSC group, we are able to share a password protected file. What I wasn't sure, I don't know if I can send it to 7 people, and that's why I wasn't sure how it works enough, the software, whatever software we use to do that. But I don't know if anyone else has that same desire. I think Sahara, I think I could share the password protected file with you. I just don't know if I can do it with a group. I'm honestly just amateur at that level.
I don't know if you could send it to me. I can upload it to my SharePoint drive, which then I can share externally.
Let's try that, because I think I could get you, Stephanie, I can get you the
I'm pretty sure that I can share my OneDrive files to external entities.
I think that would be great. So I can get you the password protected file tomorrow morning. You'll have it in your box, and then if you can download it to your your program to get it to Sarah. That would be, it's a 3-step process, but it should work that way.
Yeah. That's a lot easier than printing and writing on it. And
Totally agree. Great. Well, this is excellent. I appreciate everyone's time. I don't have anything else at this point, so I don't know what to do next.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. There's nothing else.
I'll second.
I think we need the unanimous.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me. I
I'm
have
sorry,
to
the roll call vote.
roll
yeah.
call. And first, Stephanie, again, thank you for everything and congratulations. And I know it's not goodbye yet, so but thank you.
oh, you're very welcome, and it's been a pleasure working with everybody.
Yes. Ditto. Okay, and with that, roll call. Zygmunt,
Aye.
Babbitt,
Aye.
Durance,
Aye.
Drown,
Yes.
Defensor,
Yes.
Lopes,
Yes.
Costumian, yes. Thank you, everyone.